The top 5 things women wished men cared about with their health. Now, okay, before you sigh or groan or just even stop listening entirely because your man brain went to the old cliche of a woman nagging you about your health, I want you to just pause for a second. And that's going to be the first challenge and the first takeaway from this episode. I'm 4 sentences in and we got a challenge and a takeaway already. Yeah. So instead of outright rejecting this idea, or staying with this idea of saying, this is just nagging, I hate it, why are you bothering me with this? Instead, say to yourself or out loud, that's an interesting point. I'll have to consider that. And then marinate on what was just told to you without judgment. Let it sit there for 2 or 3 days and then reevaluate that thought. Because a lot of times, as we know, another person's perspective might help us see blind spots that we don't if we don't reject it outright. So, and consider too, the reason women want to have these conversations is because they care about our health. And for the longest time on this guy talk show, Who Cares About Men's Health, a majority of our listeners have been women. We don't know why for sure, but it might have something to do with they were looking for insight to help the men in their lives. Because whether it's wives, moms, sisters, daughters, aunts, grandmas, the health decisions men make not only impact our own health and us, but they impact others in our lives. So the first thing we have to do is reframe it from nagging or however you're framing this to concern. And that can be tough and take time. So in an effort to continue to challenge old paradigms, we're going to ask women what they want the men in their lives to know about health in a series that we're calling Women Who Care About Men's Health.
Yeah, I like it.
Oh, we answered the question finally after 5 years. Who cares about men's health? Women do.
Women.
That's the answer.
Women do.
That's the answer. The women in our life. Yeah.
This is Who Cares About Men's Health with information, inspiration, and a different interpretation of men's health. I'm Scott Singpill. I bring the BS, the MD to my BS, Dr. Troy Mattson.
Scott, good to be here. Good to be talking about men's health and good to be talking to a woman.
He's an I Care About My Health convert, producer Mitch Sears.
Excited to get some perspective.
Yeah, you sound excited.
You sound thrilled, Mitch.
I don't know.
Sure.
This might be tough for our guest today. Mitch might be the hard one here on the show.
He's the tough. He's the resistant one.
Yeah. And because he knows today's guest the best, I'm going to let Troy introduce our guest today.
I do know today's guest the best. This is Tammy King. This is my younger sister. She's an incredible mother. She's a runner, has completed multiple marathons, including the Boston Marathon. She has a master's degree in English, has taught at a college university level, and now works as a technical writer for a tech company. So, Tammy, thank you so much for being on our show.
Thanks, Troy. I'm excited to be here.
Is that the nicest Troy's ever been to you right there?
He's a really nice brother.
Yeah. There was no picking on you. There were no little jabs. No, nothing.
No, he's a good one. He's a keeper.
There we go. Thank you, Tammy.
All right. Some other things to know about Tammy, in addition to that she's Troy's sister. And before you say something like, wow, you guys are lazy, Troy's sister's your guest. Is that where we're at on the show?
This is what it's come to. We just pull family members in.
If you ever want to be on the podcast, you can always reach out to us. We invite anybody to be on the show. hello@thescoperadio.com. So anyway, Troy's sister, avid podcast listener and loves Who Cares About Men's Health. Tammy, do you love it because your brother's on it or did you discover it independently? How did that happen?
Well, I discovered it through Troy, but it has helped me so much as a mom. It's interesting because my kids started to go through, my older teens started to get acne. And at that time, I was listening to your dermatology podcast, and he talked about how no teen should have to have acne, and you recommended Differin gel. And I went and got that right away, and my kids' acne cleared up. Like, it was just so great and awesome. And
That's
just
cool.
so many things like that have happened, like where I love using TD's recipes for my family, trying to make it healthier.
Oh, Teresa Dvorak from the Man Meal series.
Yes, I love her curry, and I've used that multiple times. It's become a staple in our house. Yeah, but it's great. Like the hidden sugar episode has been great for my family. Like we'll look at how many added sugars are in cereal. We'll look at added sugars in different things, and I discuss it with my kids. So that's been really valuable.
Cool.
That's cool. I have to say that episode probably has been the most impactful of any of the dietary things we talked about because I was so shocked. And then I look at the sugar that's in stuff I was eating, like yogurt. I was like, oh, yogurt's healthy. So yeah, right. I totally agree.
So just overall, it's been an awesome podcast for me as a mother and a wife. And a daughter and a sister just in general. So I appreciate what you guys do.
All right. So the list is the 5 things women wished men cared about with their health. So Tammy, how did you come up with this list? You're the one that approached us with this list.
So I run with a lot of friends, and all of these friends are female, and they're very concerned about their health. I mean, they're running with me every day. Sometimes when we had little kids, we'd have to wake up at 3 a.m. to get in our long runs. But so they're very concerned about their health, but their loved ones in their lives were not. And it became a point of topic on our runs, just how do you help the men in your lives catch this vision of health or want to be healthier? And so it kind of made me think about this topic, like how can we help the men in our lives be healthier? And as you mentioned, Scott, in your intro, nagging does not help.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
It's not effective.
So women do know that. I didn't think women knew that. No, I'm just kidding.
Come on. Wait a sec, Scott.
And so I sense a lot of frustration, but I'm not even sure how you can help any loved one be healthier. I think it's something internal.
So did you talk to these friends and get their input into the top 5 list that
I
that
did.
you wish they cared about?
Yes, I talked to these friends. I talked to my mom.
That's my mom too, just in case anyone's
Okay.
wondering. Yeah.
Thanks.
It's the same person.
And then I actually consulted ChatGPT just to see what the internet would say. So I looked all over for articles or something, and there's not a lot out there. And so ChatGPT was helpful, and it was identical to what my friends and my mom and I came up with.
Really?
Mhm.
Wow.
Which is
What was
pretty cool.
when you saw that, what did you think?
I was impressed.
Yeah.
Huh.
I guess it's pretty universal then. I guess these concerns aren't like some fringe concerns
No.
that, only the women in our lives have. This seems to be pretty universal across all women. Wow. But when you said that the men in the lives of these women that you've talked to don't care about their health, expand on that a little bit. What does that mean? Or is that getting too much into your list?
It's mostly, for a lot of them, is frustration of their spouses being out of shape and overweight and not being able to keep up with them or play with the kids.
Okay.
Another friend, it was her husband really struggled with depression and was unwilling to admit that. So things like that came up.
And any idea why the men just kind of ignore these things or don't deal with them? Is it they're unaware? I mean, do you have any insight on that from yourself or the women you talk to?
I don't. So that's a question I'd ask you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the $100,000 question.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, exactly. And I think we've kind of talked about that before. A lot of time it's pride, or it's just, we just don't feel like we have the time to address it, or we have other priorities, or, so I think there are a lot of factors. But it's interesting though that like you said, Tammy, a lot of these women you talk to noticed in their husbands, they had these issues and they wished they cared about them. But again, the challenge is how do you get people to care about it? But I'm curious how this list looks.
Okay. One more comment on that. There was a great Washington Post article that came out in April, and it just said men are socially programmed to not complain. And so it could be part of it. Cultural biases around masculinity that teach boys and men to hide their feelings and not complain about their health.
Yep. And it's a sign of weakness as well. I've heard that.
Yeah.
Like you're not strong enough to deal with whatever it is.
Yeah.
So a lot of reasons why. And I would imagine too, just maybe being unaware could truly be one of them as well. I think that's really a complicated question. So.
Right. And there's one more thing I want to mention too along that. So this is from the Washington Post article. For years, the widely held belief in medical circles was that women use too many healthcare resources compared to men. As a result, men were viewed as a standard for seeking healthcare, while women were often dismissed as hysterical or anxious when they sought care.
Oh.
And they said, we used to think women were overutilizing healthcare and men were doing it correctly. What we realized was that most women were doing it better, mostly for preventive care, and men were actually underutilizing healthcare.
Interesting.
Fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah. Interesting. And it's probably because historically a lot of, going back 50 years, a lot of the healthcare providers, at least on the physician side, were men. And so they probably thought, well, this is what I would do. And these women are here for things I wouldn't come in for. And,
Right.
So surely they're wrong. Where it's like, as men, we're the ones that are just, we should be addressing these things, but for whatever reason, we don't. So,
by the way, Tammy, you came prepared. Do you want to, you want a spot on the show?
Do you want to
More
take a
prepared
spot?
than I do.
Yeah, we've been having some issues with Troy lately. We've been looking for now.
Seriously.
All right. So, guys, let's go ahead and have our guesses to what might be on Tammy's list, and we'll see how well we can do. I'm sure we'll do terribly. The top 5 things women wished men cared about with their health. Let's start with you, Troy. What do you think's on this list?
Diet's got to be on there. Like healthier eating. I guarantee women wish that men ate either fewer calories or less sugar, a more balanced diet, more fruits and vegetables. That's got to be on there.
Or more of a plant-based diet, right?
Yeah,
Which,
more of a
again,
plant-based diet. Yeah.
plays into this whole manly thing that men don't eat salads, we eat steaks, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Got to have our meat.
All right, Tammy, are you keeping track? So at the end here, we can see who got the most. Because I know
score.
Yeah, I know Troy's going to want to turn it into a competition. So.
I didn't say that. No. Tammy knows everything in our family becomes a competition, so I intentionally try to avoid it. So that's just the nature of the Madsen family.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, Mitch, what's on your list? What do you think is going to be on the list?
All right, so I was really fighting against all of the stereotypes from like sitcoms in my life, like Married with Children, like
lean into it.
Lean into that. Okay, all right.
That's real life.
Because so I was thinking that like work stress, probably a big one. Like men like not dealing with their mental health and getting super stressed at work. I thought diet and fitness, right? It's like the perennial like fat slob of a husband type of stereotype, right? Hey, that you should probably care about that. And then preventive care. The guys never go to the doctor. They're really bad when they're sick, but they don't go, et cetera. So it's that kind of stuff, like not getting help when they need it.
That's a good one too. Yeah. Colonoscopies.
That's constantly, a joke on there too. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, boy, it's hard going third because
we stole all yours.
Yeah, a lot of mine have been crossed off, but I think in my life, the main one is, and my wife, I wouldn't say that she ever nags me about these things. So I'm pretty fortunate, but there are times where she's like, I think you should go to the doctor about that. And I'm like, I think I know when I need to go see the doctor. Right. My time frame is just a little different than yours. But I would say that that's one. Even I'm guilty of that. I think another one is like men ignoring nagging health issues that they won't stop talking about, or that other people in our lives see that they decrease our quality of life. And they think if we just go do something about it, then, we'd live such a better life. I have an example in my life. I'm not going to name who, but hearing aids, just not wanting to wear hearing aids.
Yeah.
Right. And we know that not hearing can lead to mental health issues. It leads to disengagement and that sort of thing. But for whatever reason, it's not manly to wear hearing aids, or we deny that we have that issue.
Mm-hmm.
Mitch, right on that, you should see a mental health professional about blank. Better managing stress or dealing with a traumatic event in their life or childhood issues that might be getting in the way of our relationships. I think women can really see that and we can't. And then one nobody else guessed, use sunscreen.
Oh, sure. Like I am stronger than the sun as far as I am concerned. Yeah.
I just have a nice leathery complexion. Why should I need sunscreen?
Like just put that stuff on. Why don't you use it? I'm not going to. So those are my guesses. Tammy,
that's a good one.
Yeah. How did we do? Did any of us get anything on the
right?
Actually, yeah, you're all winners.
We're all winners.
Yes, except for the sunscreen one.
Okay.
They're all within the list, but sunscreen is definitely up there. It just wasn't in the top 5. So,
I mean, so that's your fault, because that should be.
It really should.
Your friend's fault and our mom's fault.
Yeah, you guys really missed on that one.
Yeah,
we did.
Exactly.
All right, well, let's get to the list. Top 5 things women wished men cared about with their health. Let's start with number 5, which you've already told us is this is in numerical order. So number 1 is the most important, according to you and your friends and the people you talk to. So what's number 5?
And ChatGPT. Okay, so number 5 is healthy lifestyle. So this includes quitting smoking, avoiding excessive alcohol consumption, and making long-term health choices that support a healthy and sustainable lifestyle. So
All right.
you guys have hit on this a lot within your podcast, just maintaining that healthy lifestyle and avoiding these various addictions.
Yeah, so it is a little bit broad, but it sounds like, that relates to just avoiding the bad habits, the bad health habits, and then having some good ones in there as well.
Yes, that one was quite broad, but it's mostly, the smoking and alcohol use. So
Okay, smoking and alcohol that's probably more than nutrition in your group, would you say?
Yeah.
That's interesting. And it's also interesting, I think maybe the reason I could speak to the drinking, because I like to drink beer. I love craft beer. And I've heard that before. Maybe you're drinking a little too much. And I haven't responded positively to it. And I'm going to admit I was probably using alcohol as a distraction to other things that were going on in my life, even though at the time I would deny it. And I might even still deny it if you really press me on it. But I mean, let's be honest. And I think the other thing is with all of these things, I think sometimes we as a society and men see this as a yes or no, an on or off thing, right? Like stop drinking less means I can't drink anything, as opposed to just being maybe more reasonable or moderate about it and having that discussion. Well, what could that look like? Maybe that's just a couple on the weekend. Maybe instead of 4 at the party, it's 2, And I think too, for me, the reason maybe I push back against that is because that's hard. That's hard to do.
Yeah.
And it's not fun to just have a couple as opposed to 3 or 4.
Yeah. I mean, I think, again, I'm thinking in terms of other health habits, like maybe it's sodas, but maybe that's going to fall under more of a diet thing. But it sounds like it's just kind of those things that maybe a man does that, like you mentioned, Scott, that maybe we just don't have the insight into. Maybe it's a little more excessive than it should be, and it becomes problematic, and the women in our lives wish that we could cut back or leave the habit altogether.
These are things men do. We drink, we smoke. Society has told us that. That's what manly men do.
Sure. Because that's kind of what I was thinking too. It's not just women, but like when I was some of my partners in the past, like it's been, hey, notice you've been smoking a lot lately, back when I was still smoking. And it was like, it was an affront, right? It was this like, you don't know how hard I have it. And you don't know, like, it was that kind of response. But looking back, especially these days, they just cared, they didn't want me. Yeah. They were seeing as an outsider, they were seeing what it was doing to my health, seeing what it was doing to my mental health, seeing what it was doing to my sleeping, everything. Right. And so for them, it was, hey, I care about you. I want you to be healthy. I hope you don't get lung cancer, right? That kind of stuff. But at the time, it was like, no, you guys, you are impinging on me. You are like, this is tyranny, like whatever it is, But
in a couple episodes, we hit on this aspect too, that like oftentimes smoking, drinking are the result of other things in our lives. Especially the one that the episode we had with Lauren and his struggle with alcohol. It's not about the beer. It's not about the booze. It's not about the cigarettes. It's about something else. And that's scary to have to face. And it also seems kind of overwhelming at times to untangle all of that so that thing goes away, right? It's not just about quitting the drinking.
Right.
Tammy, any thoughts where we're just making a bunch of excuses?
That sounds like a lot of justification on our part.
No, and I think so many people listening will relate to that. Like, it is so hard.
And I think also us men, we think, if we put our mind to something, we should be able to do it. So if we want to quit drinking, we should. And sometimes it's harder than that. So then it's just easier to get defensive about it, right? I don't know.
Right.
Anyway, that was a great number 5. Let's move to number 4 on the list. Top 5 things women wished men cared about with their health. What's number 4?
Okay, so number 4 may not really fit, but it was important to those I talked to. And none of you guessed it. So it's understanding women's health issues.
Oh, wow.
Is that interesting?
Yeah, wow.
Listen, we are so egocentric. We didn't even guess that. That's fascinating.
They just wanted us to know them.
Yeah.
Wow. That's so...
What if we don't want to?
What if we just don't want to know?
Sorry. As women, we don't want to deal with it either.
Sure.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
That's a bomb you dropped on.
You just dropped that
right there.
But if you think through your past episodes, there was one where Troy was learning about pregnancy and labor and delivery. And that's what we want, is like have a little empathy to what we have to go through. And then
Sure.
in this one, like menopause, just hormonal changes and everything like that. So
yeah, that's a fascinating one. Yeah, that's really interesting. That's at the top in these top 5, because it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But and it is obviously we're framing this as what women wished men cared for about their health, but it obviously relates to the health of the relationship.
yeah.
And just I think that in terms of a man's empathy and those factors as well, it relates to that in terms of a man's actual mental health or however we want to frame it. But yeah, and that's funny because that's something we really haven't talked about on the show.
No.
Besides the pregnancy
well,
episode.
and I guess that's just kind of it too. Is it's just like if our response to the women in our lives and their health issues is women be crazy, right? If that's like if that is our response, like how much are we shutting down empathy or understanding or all of that just by being like, ladies are sometimes weird,
Yeah.
Tammy, how would you suggest that us as men manifest those conversations, keeping in mind that maybe all women are a little different? Like, I'm picturing my wife, and would she want to talk about her health issues? I don't know, and maybe that's just me trying to avoid it. But how would you or other women you've talked to like to see that manifested?
Okay, so I do have something to say about this. So I have 5 children, so I've had a lot of pregnancies, and I dealt with, this is really rare, but I dealt with prenatal depression. It was just for a short time, just a hormone spikes, and it had a huge effect on me. And as I was going through this multiple times because of my pregnancies, it was very real to me. Like I would think something was wrong with my husband not taking me on as many dates as he should, or spending as much time as he should with me, or I'd almost make up problems to compensate for what I was feeling. And the worst thing my husband could have said was, oh, it's just your hormones, or, oh, it's just that time of the month. That is the worst thing. I think what men need to do is just say, oh yeah, let's do this together. Let's go on a date. Like, even though I know once I'm past that period that I was being a little ridiculous, my husband taking my concerns seriously was the best thing he could have done, and not just blaming it on hormones or pregnancy or any other related outside or what the real issue was.
Take feelings seriously, and then would you want him to talk to you about them, discuss them, ask you about them?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it probably won't make any sense as you're talking to, it won't make any sense. And you'll probably talk in circles over and over, but it helps so much.
Okay.
And I would love to hear other women what they think, but for me that helps. Like just talking through it, and it won't make any sense at all. But then I get over it and I feel better and life goes on. So
all right, guys. I think we learned something. I think it's just your hormones is never a good response.
It's never a good response.
And how many of us men have used that response in multiple situations with the women in their lives?
And never just say it's that time of the month.
Never ever do that. Never
leave that.
Don't say it
seriously, and just smile and talk through it. And
yeah,
that's good. We had an episode on that, didn't we, guys?
We had the episode on
Dr.
feelings
Jones?
with Dr. Jones. Being available. So in a sense we did. Yeah. Being available and talking through things. And, our tendency is, obviously it's kind of a stereotype, but we always just kind of want to, okay, let's fix the problem. What's the underlying issue? Okay, hormones. Great. Let's move on.
Can't do that.
That's not a great approach.
Yeah. And it's not a fix-it solution. It's not. There won't be.
That's a good thing to that's a great insight. Yeah. Sometimes it's not a fix-it solution. It's let's talk about it. What's what can we do? But again,
it's not what
can I do? Because that's what I'm going to all the time.
Let's go get ice cream and talk about it.
Let's go get ice cream and talk about it.
Wow.
Right.
There's another thing I just learned. Let's go get ice cream and blank. I think.
Yes. Yeah. I like it.
I hope that's not being too stereotypical.
No. Good.
All right. Wow. This is a great list. All right. So the top 5 things women wished men cared about with their health. Let's get number 3 on the table.
Number 3 is mental health. And so all of you hit on this. Women value men who prioritize their mental health and well-being. This involves acknowledging and addressing stress, anxiety, and other mental health concerns. So women wish men would seek support to deal with these problems.
And your experience and the women's experience and ChatGPT is that we don't. Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, I do. Where you just want to push it aside, ignore it, but it's definitely something there.
Mm-hmm. And what are the repercussions that you see of not dealing with those sorts of things?
I think it affects the family a lot. If it's a father or a husband, it really affects the family. And women will turn and think, oh, is it something I've done? Is it something I'm not good at? And it kind of makes them withdrawn from the family, where I think if there are mental health issues, get help so you can be present, so you can be there.
Yeah.
And did you find, so a lot of women who brought this up, were they saying they wish their husbands would talk to them more specifically about mental health concerns or issues, or more seeking professional help, or kind of all of the above, or what was the sense you were getting?
So the sense I've received is their husbands do talk to them about it. Not really, though. I'd have to say not really. Like, they know it's coming. They know that they're in a depressed state, and they wish that they would seek help. They wish that they would go and do what they need to help with their mental health issues.
And I know we've talked before, too, about how men a lot of times will manifest depression and anxiety as anger. Did that come up? Were they, women?
No.
That hasn't been so much.
Come up in my circles.
It sounds like in your circles it was kind of detachment.
Withdrawn.
Wanting to sleep for long periods.
Interesting. And maybe they have brought it up with their spouse, or at least in some form kind of brought it up. Are you finding that they mentioned that they have felt depressed, or is it more just kind of like, hey, I just don't have the energy to take on that project or help around the house? Is it manifesting more that way, or are they actually really acknowledging like, hey, I'm depressed, or, what are those conversations like?
So they don't acknowledge that it's depression. It's more the lack of energy, not wanting to do things, withdrawn. And their wives are frustrated, but what can we do? We can't call in. I don't know. I don't think I would call the doctor for them. I'd want it to be their decision.
Yeah. No, I don't think you can.
For sure.
Yeah.
That would be a bad
move.
Just like telling a woman it's her hormones, I think.
Exactly.
That's the male equivalent.
Kind of. Yeah.
Yeah. A guy would totally shut down if that happened. There's no question. That's interesting, though. Yeah, and it makes sense. And we all mentioned it. We've given a lot of airtime to mental health, and I think that's a very good thing that we've done that, because it's such a big issue, I think, for men, where we just don't want to talk about it. Yeah. We just keep it inside. And, as Tammy mentioned, spouses, significant others all pay the consequences of that. Families do. Mm-hmm. And we may not even recognize it. We may just be like, I just don't have the energy or interest in doing that. Maybe that's how we see it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking when Tammy said that, is that, are men making the link that that's depression?
Right.
And then, for me with depression, and I think in retrospect, I've had depressive moments in my life. I think you're like, is this or isn't this? And you don't want to label it because you're like, oh, it probably isn't. It's probably just life, or it's probably this or probably that. Right. It's the old analogy of, if I break my arm, I can see it, but depression is a little bit more murky. Right.
Right.
And then it's just like, well, what am I going to do about it? If I go to somebody, what are they going to be able to do? Is talking about it's not going to change anything. The only thing that's going to change is changing my situation. And I think we can fall into the trap of not realizing that there are people out there that have tools that can help us if we just go and give it a chance.
Yeah.
Give it a chance.
That was actually one of the biggest things that my therapist ever taught me was, hey, your partner isn't a therapist. Right. And it's as dumb as that sounds, it seems so obvious, but really, this is your mental health is kind of something that you need to deal with. It is your responsibility. And you need to do it with, if you're in a situation where you need professional help, you need to go to someone who has those tools. right? The difference between like asking your buddy Dave to help with your car versus taking it to a mechanic, right?
Yeah.
Like your partner cares and loves you and wants the best for you, but they're also, unless you're dating a therapist, I guess, like they're not the ones with the tools that can really help if you're in that state.
It's the tools, and it's also having an objective party, because it's funny, like as a physician, I have the tools, but like my wife Laura asked me to, like, she had like this, I don't know, it was like a little lipoma, like a little fatty growth, and she asked me, like, on her back, very small. It's just like, well, could you just cut this off? I was like, sure, I can do that. I'm a doctor. It just totally grossed me out. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is ridiculously difficult. And she's like, you are a doctor, aren't you? It's like, yeah, I'm a doctor, but it's you. I'm cutting into you. You know? So anyway, when you lose that objectivity, I think that makes it really difficult. So even if your spouse is an amazing therapist, I think it's just asking way too much of them to try and counsel you and help you through those things. So it's a great point of I think they can help point you in the right direction, but seeking that external help, I think, is probably better for the relationship too.
Yeah.
Still the stigma remains, even though we consider ourselves maybe a little bit more enlightened because we've spent some time talking to people and trying to deal with these issues. Like my dad, would Kenny have ever gone to a therapist? No. So why am I going?
No.
Sure.
Right.
But we live in a society, and this is the drum I love to bang, where we have to actively manage all aspects of our health. We can't just assume that we're going to get the activity and the nutrition we need. We have to actively manage that. And we're learning more and more. The same with sleep. And we're learning more and more that mental health is a thing that we need to deal with. Our dads had issues that if they could have dealt with them or had some professionals, give them some tools, could have been better and happier people, right? We kind of got to get over this. And it's something that you have to take care of. You have to acknowledge and recognize and do something about. And we have a lot of episodes that cover that. So if you think that's a thing that maybe you should address, if there's just even this little inkling that, maybe that is it, it might be worth pursuing that. That's another challenge to you, the listener.
Yeah.
All right. Top 5 things women wish men cared about with their health. Number 2.
Number 2, all of you hit on this. It's physical health. And that includes diet and exercise and getting enough sleep. So that was included in that one. So.
All right.
Okay,
Nice.
nice.
Expand on that a little bit more.
Women just want men who prioritize their well-being to make healthy choices. And all of these things, diet, exercise, sleep, contribute to that.
And for you and the women in your life, what are some examples of how us men aren't necessarily living up to those standards?
Oh.
Where to begin?
Looks like this is going to be a 2-part episode, guys.
So I would say this is the common thread through all of my friends, just the frustration of their fathers not taking care of their physical health, their spouses, even
fathers. I'm sorry. I want to just emphasize that you said fathers, which
interesting.
Yeah.
What a huge point, and that kind of resonates with me right now. So thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I had a close friend, and we were training for a marathon together, and she's just telling me how no one in her family ever exercised. And just, they were amazed that she was actually trying to run a marathon. And she specifically talked about her dad. Like, her dad was just struggling with his health, and he just never exercised and just didn't look at what he was eating. And she was very frustrated with this. But this is a common theme through many conversations I've had.
And it sounds like it's not even necessarily just the specific things they're doing. It's just about, again, caring about it.
Yeah.
Being like, hey, exercise is important, or hey, diet's important. And it sounds like for a lot of these women, they were saying that the men in their lives, the men they care about, were maybe just not even seeing the importance on that or not prioritizing it.
Yeah. Another thing I've seen too is where they'll go on a diet, they'll lose a lot of weight, and then a year later, they're back to where they started. And so it's very frustrating. Right, yeah. And I love how you guys say, no, don't do it that way. Just exercise, start with 20 minutes, or just try to cut out a few sugars, or you just start small because it's something sustainable. So another frustrating thing is these men will go on these crazy diets, or they'll have challenges with each other. We had that in one neighborhood where they would challenge each other to lose 20 pounds. They would do this crazy 2-month challenge and they were done. And then after that, they were back to where they started.
Interesting.
Sure.
It's funny you mentioned that because, yeah, you see that definitely. I think humans in general, people in general, will try to find a quick fix and do that sort of thing. But certainly with men, maybe more the challenge and like the heroic effort, like, hey, everyone check out what I'm doing. But then once you get to that point and everyone settles in like, oh, okay, this is you now, you don't get the attention for it, for the weight loss you've achieved. Now it's just maintenance and maybe it loses some of its appeal. So I've absolutely seen that too.
Yeah. They win their $200 from the pool of money and then they're done.
Yeah, you got your cash.
You're done.
And their bragging rights.
Yeah, exactly. You lose the bragging rights and the cash, it's done. So what's left? You can't lose another 20 pounds.
Right. You can't
That's actually got me thinking about my dad a little bit because when I was growing up, he wasn't as physically active, and it seems like now, a decade or two later, he rides his bike all the time. Right, he goes mountain biking. He has this little foot paddle kayak thing that he's super excited about, and it's really cool to see just how much better his mental health is, everything is. And it's like my mom she's like, load the bikes up in the truck, I'm driving you to the top of the hill. Like, she's so excited and willing to be a part of that journey with him because she sees how much it helps him. And as a son and hearing my mom's excitement about it, it's cool to have a guy in your life, a dad in your life that like it takes it seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think too, kind of what you said, Tammy, like when you first said it, I was like, well, that's really broad. But I can certainly say there have been times in my life where I can say I did not care about my health. And maybe I didn't even realize I didn't care about it. But it wasn't something I really thought much about. It wasn't something I really prioritized. I was like, I'm fine,
Right.
Where I look back now and it's kind of like, yeah, I really didn't prioritize it. It wasn't a high, something I really thought much about.
Right.
Yeah. You have to engage in it. And, I think we've talked about on this podcast a lot. It doesn't have to be a heroic effort. It can just be engage with it in small ways, and just try to be consistent with it and realize that all of these things we do today with our diet, our sleep, our nutrition, our mental health impacts the person we're going to be in the future. And if we're going to be a healthy, mobile person that's able to do the things we want and enjoy life, or are we not? It doesn't have to be all perfect all the time, but I think you do have to realize that this is a daily investment on all these fronts that you have to do, and they can be small little steps. So
I like that.
All right. Well, we are here. The top 5 things women wish men cared about with their health. Number 1, Tammy, what is it?
All right. Drum roll. Here we go. Regular health checkups.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
There it is.
So
Nice.
you guys did an entire episode on going to see your primary care physician. So you're right on par.
Yeah, but note that we were well into 100 plus episodes before we did it.
Yeah, we started this 5 years ago. So that's
Right.
That's about how long it takes a guy to actually go in and see a primary care provider. Forget the yearly checkup.
Right. And also included in that are just the regular screenings and early detection tests.
Yeah, is that a battle in the lives of the women you talk to in your life,
Yes.
getting a man to go do like a colonoscopy or getting their cholesterol checked?
No way they would.
Really?
Yeah. So my husband and I have been married for 19 years. And in those 19 years, he's gone to just for a regular checkup one time. Yeah. So,
Wow.
Yeah.
Poor Cameron. He's going to love that I said that.
Poor guy. Hey, I will just say, if I did not have an insurance benefit that reduced my premium based on primary care providers, I never would have started going to one. I would have just been like, I'm fine. I don't need it. What's the point? So I, as much as like, wow, you got to be kidding. At the same time, if I didn't have that incentive, I don't think I ever would have gone.
Yeah. I think I'm the same way, and we did talk about this in that recent episode. If it wasn't for the incentive, I don't know that I would go. I think now I'd be more likely to, but I know that there's definitely, even in me, this little sense of I'm going to go in and they're just going to be, everything's okay. And then I'm going to leave. But, there was a couple of times where everything was not okay.
Yeah.
Right. And really the best case scenario is you go in and you do take some time out of your day and, that sucks. And you have to sit in a waiting room and that sucks. And you got other things you'd rather do and that sucks. But the best thing that could happen is you leave and the doctor's like, you're all good, right?
Yeah.
Like, Why wouldn't you want that outcome?
So my
Yeah.
husband finally went. So he finally went to the doctor. It's just like, we're turning 40. We need to figure out, make sure we're good. Check cholesterol. And so we just made an appointment with a doctor. I tried to get recommendations, but couldn't really find any good ones. So we just went with one on our insurance. And it was so funny because this doctor just kept asking, well, what's wrong? Well, what's wrong? And my husband kept saying,
weird.
I'm just here for a general checkup. And so it's almost like we need to educate both sides.
Yeah.
Women are going to come in for general checkups too, and treat them that way. Like, okay, we got to do all these tests. We got to make sure cholesterol level is good, your sugars, everything. So I thought that was interesting, and it kind of put a bitter taste in my husband's mouth about doing the general checkup. Like,
Wow.
okay, I guess I don't need to go.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's disappointing to hear that.
It
Because
is.
I mean, there are things that he should have checked, and sounds like he probably didn't. That's tough. But that kind of gets to our primary care provider episode also, where we just talk about, we talked about that a little bit, that doctors are humans, and there's a wide variety of doctors, and some have different approaches to their jobs.
And it's another reminder that, again, like, we as a society, and I think younger generations are doing better at this, we say the doctor is the keeper of our health. So when we go in and the doctor goes, well, why are you here? Well, just check up, I guess. That's another thing now we have to actively manage, right? Like, if you get a provider like that, you have to be in charge of your health. And we probably really should be anyway. You have to be the one that goes in, well, I understand that I need a colonoscopy when I turn 50, and I'd like to talk to you about that, and I'd like to get this done and this done. In a perfect world, is that the way it should be? No. But again, it's just another thing I guess we have to actively take charge of. If you get a provider like that, you might have to find a different provider. And I think it's also insight into us as men, like, right? How stereotypical was that response? What are you here for?
Oh my God.
Seriously. I mean, it should, and again, colonoscopy at 45, had to correct you, Scott. Had to throw it
thank
out
you.
there.
They changed that, didn't they?
They changed it. They changed it. And that's what my provider told me. That's how it happened. I would not have known that because it's not something I follow routinely, like, regular health maintenance stuff like that. And he told me that only because I went in for my yearly visit. He's like, oh yeah, they changed the recommendation to 45. You should probably do that.
But just to circle back, like, it is interesting to hear that is number one, because it really is. It seems low bar, but I mean, there are men in my life that I've met that will take their car to get that routine maintenance like clockwork, right? They take care of it, they wash it, but when it comes to the idea of going in this meaty vehicle that we live in, like, no, like they will never go to the doctor for that. They will never get the routine checkup. And especially now, I'm now the convert of the group, right? Like, I'm the one engaging with my health or whatever. Like, man, things run a whole lot better now that I've had some things tested and it's regularly checked. And, I had my first PCP visit a couple months ago that was, hey, you're fine.
That must have been exciting.
And it was exciting because it was like, we keep finding all these terrible things and things I need to work on and things I need to fix. And man, oh man, it's like, okay, cool. Check next year to make sure I'm still doing okay. And it's like, absolutely,
Nice.
And so it's kind of interesting that is a concern, because how do you know if something's off? How do you know if your cholesterol is high? How do you know if you're at an increased risk of this, that, or the other? If you're not engaging.
Tammy, super insightful list.
Yeah.
That was fantastic. Guys, takeaways.
My takeaway was, the big surprise for me was the top 5 was that women want us to care more about and be aware of their health issues and women's health. And we haven't talked at all about that. It's also nice to know women have given this as much thought as they have in terms of what they really wish the men in their life cared about. So that's really cool.
Yeah,
That's a great insight
on our conversations. It's quite
Right.
entertaining. Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like these were not like trying to pry answers out of your friends and the people in the women you talked to. This list came out pretty quickly. It sounds like.
Very quickly.
Mitch, takeaways.
So the thing that was really surprising to me was just how high preventative care was. Like, it to me, it was like, oh yeah, the big, marquee ones, quit smoking, don't drink so much, whatever. But to hear that really the thing that our loved ones and the people in our lives really want us to do is to just do the routine maintenance, for lack of a better term, like that's really interesting. And has really like made me realize that, yeah, I should probably continue doing what I have started doing in the last couple of years. So
my takeaway is we had a whole conversation with a woman about health and there was no nagging. I mean, there was absolutely none.
There was no nagging.
It was nagging. I think the challenge that I issued at the top of the podcast is still valid and it's a worthwhile one. So for the conclusion, work on that reframing. However you currently process incoming info from women or anyone in your life about your health, maybe just pause for a second and then just say, even if it's to yourself, that's an interesting point, I'll have to consider it. Or try to figure out what the note is inside the note, as they like to say in script writing review. Like, what is the person really trying to say to me? They might not have packaged it perfectly. They might not have said it perfectly. They might not have even said what it was their main concern. But what are they really trying to get at? And just really consider that and give it a few days. And then the second challenge is go to a woman in your life, whether it's a daughter, a sister, a wife, close friend, and ask them about your health. What do they care most about? Is there anything they're concerned about with your health? And it could seem like a big ask, but like today's podcast, you might be surprised by the answers that they give, and you might be surprised the motivations behind them. And there probably are going to be a lot of other surprises as well when you have those conversations.
Yeah, I that's the number one thing on my list. I am fascinated by this discussion, and I have never asked my wife, what do you wish I cared about with my health? I've never asked her that question.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm curious, and I'm gonna approach it non-defensively and just out of just curiosity. So this has been good.
Non-defensively and curiosity. Do you have a takeaway or a final thought, Tammy? You've been a fantastic guest.
Oh, thank you. My final thought is, when I first asked my mom, when I first heard about this podcast and coming on, I went straight to my mom because she's who I always go to first. And that was her number one thing too, was the yearly healthcare check, because it helps so much in the lives of the women who love you. They can detect cancers, they can detect heart disease, diabetes, so many things. And it just helps the women in your life so much because they really do love and care about your health.
A little peace of mind there, catch it early enough. Do something about it. And I do need to mention, Tammy, you're in a family of doctors. So I think that says a lot. That you're in a family of doctors, and that's still like getting the men doctors in your life to go get those checkups is hard and a challenge. Yeah. It's how hard and a challenge. And they should know better.
Yeah.
Troy, you should know better.
I know I should.
Troy's dad, so you should know better.
My dad should know better. We should all know better. It's very true. Yeah.
All right. Work on reframing. Go to that woman in your life or multiple women and let us know how it goes at hello@thescoperadio.com. Thanks for listening and thanks for caring about men's health.